For those of you who are just joining us for the first time, hi, I'm Sarah Stevick, creator, founder of Teaching A Path to L&D. We have a poppin' LinkedIn group, and we also have some really cool Slack channel stuff going on. We got a book club. That makes it really official because we have a book club. And we also have resume help. We have portfolio help. We have excellent mentors available for you for free. You can sign up on that at www.teachlearndev.com. And Aaron will drop those chats in throughout the entire presentation today. Tyler is also one of our mentors through that, so you can always sign up for a session with him. I'm a mentor as well. You can sign up for a session with me or Heidi, Cheryl Oberlin. We have Leslie Early. If any of you are a fan of That's ID podcast, that's Leslie's podcast. She's also one of our mentors. So we're very blessed to have just a great bunch of teachers. All of our mentors were former teachers who have made this transition and are happy to help in any way that we can. And again, that is for free. Everything we do for free. If anybody asks you for a credit card number, they're not with us. Okay, so just kind of be aware of that. All right. Oh, I'm going to go full screen. We're going to make it, yes, look how fancy. Okay. So welcome to the From Teacher Resume to ID Resume. What we are going to talk about today, first we're going to talk about owning your new title. And then we're going to get into the ATS system and how to beat it. Then we're going to talk about some resume sections that you should include, key achievements in ID terms versus teacher terms, how to tweak based on a job description. And then, of course, we always have our Q&A element. It's important while we're going throughout today that we are acknowledging the fact that this is not all encompassing. These are based on personal experiences and research and industry knowledge. So always, we like to say trust but verify. So make sure that you are getting your information from multiple sources and making sure that at the end of the day, a resume is truly about you. So when you have so many external inputs, sometimes you can get a little bit lost. And it's really important to not lose that. Okay. So if your gut says, that's not really what I'm feeling on putting on my resume, don't put it on your resume. That is key point numero uno. If you forget everything else from today, that's what I'd like you to take away, is that if you do not feel confident with the resume you wrote for any reason, that doubt is going to come through in your application. It's going to come through in your interview because that is your foundation. So whatever you start with as your resume, make sure that you feel solid about it when you put it out there. Okay, so to kick us off, what do you feel are the most challenging parts about crafting your resume? For me, one of the most challenging parts when I first started was I just wanted to put everything on it because I'd done so much. I was like, well, okay, all of this must be impressive, right? So I'm just gonna put it all in there. The summary. So it's hard sometimes to write about yourself and keep it in a short little blurb. Teacher lingo to ID lingo. Yeah, it's important to be using the language of the position that we're trying to break into. Promoting yourself. Yes, definitely promoting yourself is important. Keeping it to one page. We're going to talk about that throughout, but it is okay to have 2 pages. It really is. And it really even is okay to have 3, as long as everything is different and super duper relevant, but we'll get to that. Quantifying can be really hard sometimes, right? Keeping it concise. Yes, we don't want to lose them in our babble. I don't know. I know for myself, I babble a lot. I don't know if you picked up on that in the numerous webinars that you've come into with me, but yes, definitely. How to actually show what you've done as a teacher. It's so much more than lesson planning. So very true. Translating current skills into a new career. I feel like I missed some. Everything, yep, trying to fit everything did as a teacher. How to cut stuff down. So I hear that there are things that, you know, we kind of want to hone in on based on what are they looking for. Feeling confident in my experience. Yes, I can totally relate to that. Authentically representing what I've done in a way that's understandable to corporate hiring managers. Yeah, that can be intimidating when somebody says, okay, write this on your resume. And you're like, I have no idea what that means. Even though you're telling me that's what I did, I don't like that. It's Greek. It's all Greek to me. And so that can feel like you're lying or like it's a falsehood. And anytime it doesn't feel authentic, it's okay to stand up for yourself. It's okay to say, I appreciate that input and that perspective, but I think I'm going to keep it this way. There's nothing wrong with that. And if somebody who is giving you advice on your resume is not receptive to that, you know, you might want to think about taking what they say too much to heart. Just gonna slip that little nugget right in there. But great. Yes, these are all concerns, and we'll talk about most of those today. Okay, I love this picture. This picture just spoke to my heart, you know, like the heart that lives inside your heart. I'm sure it's in there. It has to be. Yeah. So you see that last fish, and he says, someone is always better. And the fish ahead of him, someone's always better. And the fish ahead of him, someone's always better. And then that last fish, crap, have I been swimming in the wrong direction for the past 3 hours? So even though we look at instructional designers now, we look at people who have made this transition and we're like, wow, they must know it all. We don't. We don't. I ask for advice all the time. I get a second pair of eyeballs all the time. I'm constantly researching because I feel like there's another fish in front of me. Like, there's always someone better, right? And it's true. There will always be someone better. But you know what? Life's not about where you stand in comparison with everybody else. Life's about where you stand with you. And so you're doing a great job with what you're doing. Just keep focused and keep going. If you are applying for an instructional designer position, look me in the eyeballs. You are an instructional designer. You are. You've been doing it for as many years as you've been teaching. You design instruction. Now, you might do it a little bit differently than what corporate does or higher ed does, and that's okay, because you and I, we both know that you're going to work hard to fill those knowledge gaps, right? You and I, we both know that you're acknowledging the fact that there are items that you don't know yet. And sometimes that's what makes us stronger, because it puts us in that growth mindset mentality. We're not stuck in that, well, I know it all. I've been doing this for, 80 million years and I'm the bee's knees, right? We can't go in with that mentality. We are the newbie, but that doesn't mean that we don't know things, because we do. As a teacher, you have really been doing this for years. You just may not or may have known what it was called, like if you've made PowerPoints, well, we call those slide decks in instructional design. But if you made slide decks or worksheets for your students, that's what an instructional designer does. In fact, I just made a workbook for the course I just created. If you have given a pre-test or a post-test, guess what? We do that in instructional design too. Okay, so you are an ID. You are. If you do not own this, they will not interview or hire you, because they're looking for an instructional designer and not a teacher. If you go in there and you say, well, I'm a teacher, but I could be an instructional designer, in their mind, they're thinking you're not ready yet. That's not to say lie. Don't ever lie on any of your documents, especially on your resume. Be very truthful about your work experience. But it's a mindset. It's adopting that ownership of, this is where I'm going to be. When you first graduated college, Yes, you had your student teaching experience, but you hadn't been a teacher before. But what did you put on your resume? You put that you were a teacher. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. And it'll come in time. It's not something that you believe automatically overnight. It's something that you adopt as you watch e-learnings, or as you practice, or as you write your resume, as you meet with other instructional designers. It's something that you become. Okay, the ATS system and how to beat it. Having a specific and targeted resume is one key way to beat the ATS system, which many commonly refer to as the black hole for resumes. And by when I say many, I think that's just me. But that's okay, whatever. There is a rhyme and a reason as to why these systems exist. It can be tricky to navigate and figure out how to come out as a winner with a shiny new job at the end, right? The tools for success include ditching the one-size-fits-all application for every job you want. If you try and take what I call a canned resume that you have created and use it to apply without changing it to every single job, that's not going to necessarily get you the results you want. So as we get into the next section, we'll dive into ways you can increase your chances of getting your resume plucked out of that bunch for actual human eyes to look at. So before we even get into that, I know many of you are kind of wondering, like, Sarah, what is an ATS? Why are you throwing acronyms at me at 7:18 on a Thursday? Like, come on, girl. So ATS system is an abbreviation for applicant tracking system, and it's a formal program that's used to submit and track your application status with an employer. So most employers use one of 4 main systems, but each of them have basically the same features. For example, it includes the link to job postings, a place to create your profile for current and future opportunities, and job alerts. So instead of reviewing every application, the recruiter can focus only on those candidates that the ATS has identified as a great match when compared with the job description. So here we have an excellent infographic. If you came to my resume workshops or watched the ones on YouTube, you might recognize this infographic. It's because I like it a lot. It has good information in graphic form. And so basically 97% of corporations use an ATS system to filter resumes. And this is because corporate jobs get a lot of applications. If you've been applying through LinkedIn, I'm sure that you've seen up in the corner, this many people have applied to this job. And that's only through LinkedIn. That doesn't include how many have applied through Indeed or through Monster or anything like that. It's just through LinkedIn. So on average, a corporate job posting receives 250 applications. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was a recruiter, I'd be like, nah, I'm not reading. I quit. So in order to kind of handle that supply and demand, what they do is they have a machine look at it and say, okay, these are the ones I think you would like. And so of those 250 applicants, about 4 to 6 of them will actually be contacted by the recruiter. The recruiter, this is my favorite part of all this little part down here, 75% of CVs or resumes will never be seen by human eyes. RIP, right? Poor little resumes living in that black hole all by themselves with them other 75% of resumes. At least they have each other. But you don't want your resume to join that sad party, right? You want your resume to be in that top 25%. So in order for that to happen, you need to customize it based on the job description. So tell me how to do that, Sarah. How do I get past this darn ATS system? Newfangled technology. Actually, this technology is it's older, even though we don't use it in education because we do, like, the ATS system does cost money to run as part of your organization. So, and let's be real, I mean, teaching jobs don't get 250 applicants like on the daily. So that would be really cool if they did. But, you know, there's a few key factors that go into the reasons why they're not seeing that kind of volume. And I don't think I have to go into those here. I think this group is kind of picking up what I'm putting down there. So the first thing you can do is use an ATS friendly template. Now, trust me, how many of y'all like the Canva? Show me with them emojis how you feel about Canva. You know, give me those reactions. Oh, I got some hearts. Yeah. Oh, lots and lots of hearts. I got some clapping. I got a thumbs up. Oh, I even got a party hat. Heck yeah. Canva's a party. Yeah. Canva's amazing. And it makes really, really pretty documents, right? And as somebody who's like, well, I want to catch the eye of a recruiter, you're like, well, maybe I'll try one of those. Highly caution against that. And here's why. Canva may or may not be able to be read by the ATS system. The ATS system's over there and it's like, I don't recognize pictures. That makes me think too hard. I only recognize words, and I only recognize words that mean something to me. So you can get a whole bunch of free ones. Jobscan.co, it's my jam. I'm not even gonna lie. That is my favorite. I will sing it to the rafters because they have a whole bunch of free stuff. I went ahead and dropped where the direct link to the resume templates that you can get from there. These are ATS friendly. And so they may not look as fancy, but they're going to not get thrown out based on a technicality. The worst thing that you could do is make sure that you have everything perfect on your resume, and then it gets stuck in the black hole because of a technicality. I mean, how heartbreaking would that be, right? The next thing you want to do is tailor your resume to every job you apply for using the job description provided. So you want to use the same terminology, but that's not to say you're going to take all those keywords and you're going to put them in a bucket and then you're going to sprinkle it out like fertilizer. Okay, that's not how it works. You actually have to put the words in sentences that make sense to humanize, because after it gets past the ATS system, a human has to read it. So if you plugged in all these words, but the statements don't make sense, that didn't work either. Also, you want to submit a .docs, DOCX, or PDF. Again, I'm not really sure what else you could submit it as, but apparently that's something that they put out there because apparently people find other ways to make it happen, Please do not add pictures, tables, or columns, or fancy titles, as this information may be distorted by the ATS system. So ATS systems do something called parsing, which sounds really cool, but it's your enemy. Because if you put anything into a table, let's say you have your work experience in a table, you're like, okay, so this will keep the date over here and this will keep where it is here and the things here. That's gonna really not pan out well, because how it reads tables is it takes it in any way that it reads it and puts it. So it might not make logical sense the way it parses it out. Also, to add to that, the headers and the footers, if you're using Microsoft Word or if you're using Google Docs, don't use the headers or the footers because the ATS system won't be able to read the information in those, and so it's lost information. So make sure that you are not using the actual headers and footers. You want to use traditional resume fonts such as Helvetica. Is it Garamond or Garamond? Garamond? That was right the first time? Okay, cool. Or, and I can pronounce this one, Georgia. Yeah, you can use Georgia font, Jobscan.co has a whole list of ATS friendly fonts. It's okay to play with font size and bolding and all that, but you don't want to use a font that is not readable by the ATS system. That would be a shame. Okay, this is a biggie, and I see this all the time. Spell out any acronyms and put the acronym in parentheses next to it. So for example, subject matter expert, you would want to put subject matter expert, parentheses, SME. And that's because when they set up the ATS system to match the job description, they might have put the full words or they might have put the acronym. But if you have both, you're covered either way. Okay. Last but not least, run your resume against the job description through a tool. You can find this for free on jobscan.co. I know that there are some other ones out there, but you can upload your resume and you can copy and paste the job description and you can run it right against each other and they will give you a percentage. Here's the caveat. It is a machine and it's not the smartest cookie in the cookie box. Okay. So sometimes you'll think that you have gold, right? And then it's like, you didn't include this word 80 million times. Okay, ATS system. Like, you know, take that feedback, definitely, but also realize that it's a machine and you still have to get your resume past a human eyes. So it's okay if you use the narrow setting for the border, the page border. It'll yell at you if you run it through jobscan.co and say, you've got to have at least an inch on every border. And that's not true. You can use the narrow. I wouldn't go any closer to the edge than narrow. So yeah, everything with a grain of salt, right? Critical thinking. There is more information about the ATS system. I'm going to drop a link into the chat. Boop. Yeah. Zoom comes with sound effects now when you drop things in the chat. Boop. All right. Any questions so far?
Yes. So quick question about the acronyms. Would you spell it out every time or just the first time it's mentioned?
That's a really good question.
Tyler said the first time so that you can save space later on. What do you think?
I would agree with that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. Your resume, every little speck of that paper needs to be thought of with intention.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say the first time should suffice.
Mm-hmm. And then there was a question earlier on, Sarah, about how many years someone has been teaching. So I know there's a whole spread of years of teaching in this webinar tonight. And this question was about just how to answer how many years you've been teaching if COVID interrupted your teaching internship and you don't have like 2 years or 3 years in the classroom.
That's a good question too. I would say, think of it, your years of experience is the amount of time that you have been actively working with the instructional design tools to create instructional materials.
Mm-hmm. So even a volunteer teacher would do that, like volunteering in the classroom and stuff like that.
Yep. As long as you're making something. Same thing with if you're freelancing or if you're making projects for your portfolio right now. You're working as an instructional designer. You know, you're not getting paid, so you can't put it in your work experience, but that counts as experience. You know, yeah. That's what I would say to that. Now, for my really veteran teachers, which I applaud you, thank you so much. Not all of that experience is going to be relevant. It only goes about as far back as I would say PowerPoint. So when you first started using PowerPoint to make presentations to give to your students, that's about as far back as I would say your instructional design experience goes. Because everything beyond that, all that, tech has been replaced. So, but, Microsoft Office is still in use today. So it's okay to include that as your years of experience. So that's how we kind of garner how many years of experience do I actually have in instructional design. How many people I've seen do it, they'll say something like 10 plus years, because that way, you know, Microsoft has been around for 10 plus years, but then you don't have to necessarily say, you know, well, I have this many years instructional design experience, but I actually taught for this many, right? So you can just wrap it all up in one. Great question. Yes. Resume sections. So your resume has sections, and there are three main ones. You got, this is where it really gets tricky. You have your top and your middle, and then stay with me. You're gonna have the bottom one. And those are your three main sections, and they're great. So the top and the bottom of your resume really kind of stay the same throughout. And don't need changing with every application you submit. The only time the resume really changes is in that middle section, which is where we would put all of our work experience and your bulleted accomplishments. However, it is important to address what makes each section stand out favorably to recruiters, so you can be sure your resume stands out in a good way. So you might need to make some tweaks to the top and bottom in order to accommodate for some of those keywords. So things to think on. All righty, so let's go ahead and get into the top section. The top section of your resume should include, put your contact information on your resume, please. They can't contact you if you don't put your contact information. And you would be surprised how many people actually do not do this or forget to do this, okay? So please make sure that you do this. Make sure your phone number is correct with an area code, and check to make sure that your voicemail is professional. You know, you never want to be like in your voicemail, you know, hello? Oh yeah, that's so funny. I'm not here right now. I got to you. Call me back, or I'll call you. You know, like, no, just don't do that. I know none of y'all have that as your voicemail, but if you do, you're my hero. You just have to change it for jobs. I know sometimes it can be really uncomfortable to put your personal phone number on a resume. So I advocate for the Google Voice. It is for free, you know, and if you've been to any of my other webinars, you will know that if it's for free, it's for free. So make sure that you're putting what you're comfortable with, especially if you are embedding your resume on LinkedIn, or if you are embedding it into your portfolio. You don't want to put your personal number publicly out like that. Now, if you add your resume to LinkedIn in the private section for just recruiters, like when you're applying for jobs, it's okay to put your real number in that one. But if you have like your resume in your featured section on LinkedIn, I would really caution against using your personal number out there. Make sure your email address is professional, and you put your LinkedIn profile link, a link to your portfolio or website, and city and state. You can also put in open to relocation here. It's important that you know it's not needed to put your street address. They don't need to know exactly where you live. Just having your city and your state is enough. As much as we would like to think that all of our recruiters would send us Christmas cards, you know, that would get a little cumbersome after a while, right? Most companies only look at certain geographies, just like graphics, before the pandemic, as relocation was costly. But this looks to be changing. Several large tech companies have already announced that they are going fully remote for the foreseeable future. And the pandemic has really changed the way we do business, and it's changed the way corporate has learned to think about business. And for instructional designers, there's so much flexibility within the role and what you need to do on the daily. It is something that you can do remotely. So for example, for my job, mine is a hybrid. Once the pandemic's over, I will go in a few days a week, but the days that I need to sit down and do my recordings or whatnot, I would stay home and do my work. So it's nice to know if you're willing to relocate or if you're just looking for remote, that kind of stuff. When creating your contact and info section, again, omit your street address just to help you to provide with more real estate on your resume for other things like your website, LinkedIn, all that. Also, referring to yourself in the third person when writing an intro statement is old school. That has been replaced with a more personalized approach using I language. This is with the caveat, this is the only place on your resume that you use I language. It should not translate down into your work experience. But your summary is giving a snapshot of who you are as a person. If you're saying, oh, well, Miss Stevick is very well informed and it doesn't feel personal. It doesn't show them who that person is, right? Again, omitting contact information or at the worst, not providing a resume at all, that will be bad. So make sure that you have your resume done, that you do have this top section done. And if you don't put it on your resume, it will make it very difficult for the recruiter to contact you. You want to make it as easy as possible for providing multiple contact points in case an email bounces back or voicemail is full or LinkedIn link is broken. It's always good to have contingency plans. With that being said, your LinkedIn, if you have numbers on the back end of it, hang on for a couple seconds at the end of this webinar. I'll show you how to take those numbers off. So it's just your LinkedIn / Blake. Well, your name's not Blake, but you know what I mean. Okay. So with that, taking a look at this top section and taking a look at this bottom section, what are some things based on what we just talked about that stick out to you that this person did not do correctly?
We had someone jump in and ask if those were columns in the top section. Is that 2 columns or was it just separated by tabs? Is it 2 different sections or?
That's a great question. I do believe they are columns. Again, I caution against that, but you would want, it's okay to put a section off to the side. If that makes sense, you can have one section that's I'll show you what that looks like here coming up. And then have the meat and potatoes on this side. This is like your vegetables or your side salad. You can have that.
They're blowing up the chat. Everyone's spotting all these things.
All right, read them off to me. What we got?
We've got WWW. We've got party on.
We don't want to party on. That's great that you're partying on, Blake. You won't be partying on with our company.
Yes, and that's where Gmail, you can make a free email address. That's why mine is chancelloraaron@gmail.com for everything job search. That's it.
I see also we have using third person. Good catch. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Formatting is difficult. He didn't include his phone number.
Yep, no phone number. What else did he do?
Oh, he put his full street address.
Yep, he sure did. He wasted that valuable real estate with a full address. So if they wanted to contact him, they're probably going to send him a letter in the mail, and then the position would be filled by then.
And then at the top one, at the top section, the what to do one, people have noticed that the icons are different sizes, and they're not.
That's not ideal.
Yeah, that looks real
not necessarily all correct. And I'm really happy that you guys pointed that out, because as an instructional designer, they're going to be looking at your icons to see if they're consistent, because that's indicative of the type of detail you would put into your design work. Mm-hmm. So yes, it is important that they are the same size and that they are also the same, not formatting, style. There we go. So if you're going to use all outlines, use all outlines. Something cool that I didn't know that I learned from a recruiter friend is that they can actually search in the ATS system by the icons. So I do recommend using icons for that. So it's pretty neat. Great job, everyone. Tyler thinks opposite. I feel like I say something, then Tyler's like, no. And I'm like, oh, crap.
No,
No.
usually you and I agree on things.
This one, I feel like if it's a PNG file, you know what I mean? If it's
Yes.
showing up an image, the ATS will bust it. But
Yeah, I think, and that's a good point. And that's where Tyler's and mine are going to merge here. We're going to merge with that.
oh, you're going to merge. I thought you were going to be like, yo.
Oh, no. We're collaborative here. We're collaborative. So yeah, I would not use actual pictures. I would use the icons that come in Word. You can I don't know if you guys have seen that or not in Word, but up at the top, you can actually click insert icon and it gives you a whole bunch of different icon options. So I would use those if you're going to use the icons. They are cute. Yes, they are. Okay. Onward and upward. So the middle section is the bulk of your resume, highlighting your work experiences. Provide only relevant work history, as it's the easiest way for your recruiter to see if you're a match. If you were a bear wrestler in a former life, I don't know, it's late on a Thursday, but if that was a former position for you, for whatever crazy reason, I don't even know. I wouldn't include that, as I'm not really sure what value add that would bring other than wow factor, because that's kind of cool, but also kind of off-putting because you're like a bear. Where does that like? So, if it's not relevant and if it didn't have any skills that would contribute to what an ID would do, or if you're going for a different ed tech position or a different L&D position or something completely different, don't include it. When providing relevant experiences, only list relevant technologies still in use today with your level or years of experience using that technology, especially when looking at opportunities in instructional design. It's important to show that you're staying current with trends. So you should know either Articulate Storyline 360 or Adobe Captivate. It is fine to say that you have experience with Microsoft Office. It is fine to say that you have experience with Google Suites. Both of those are widely used, but you also want to make sure that you're showing, I do know the tools that are necessary to create the latest and greatest. That's not to say you need to know all the tools. Check out Tools of the Trade webinar. We go over that in detail. It's okay, like I said, to list PowerPoints and Google Slides as a technology still being used. We'll cover this in a little bit, but it's important to use the same language as the company in their job description to showcase you understand and can implement business needs with your transferable and relatable skills. These business words and terms help get the recruiter and hire manager's attention. If you're speaking their language, just like kids, right? If you talk to them about, I don't know, what's relevant nowadays. Is Snapchat still a thing? Yeah. So if you're like, yeah, all you kids with your snapping, I'm sure that's not how it's said either. I was never very good at that. But you want to pull it to their level. Also, you want to make sure your resume doesn't just list job tasks. If they wanted a job description, they'd go to the Google and they'd find one. They don't want to know that these banal, everyday, it could be anyone pulled off the internet. They want to know your actual experience. They want to know what you did with it. Also, this is really important. Don't copy and paste the job description into the resume because they already wrote that. And yes, it'll get past the ATS system, but again, it doesn't show what you can do. Share what you've done, show metrics, show where you've implemented something or had to do something outside of your standard day-to-day tasks and took initiative to get approval from a senior leader or supervisor to do X, Y, and Z. Numbers pop on a resume because it gives a variant in text. So anytime you can use a number like a percentage or a fraction, that kind of stuff, make sure you do. And it can also help show the impact that you've had. versus your day-to-day tasks, which don't show as much. Like if you say, you know, I designed coursework. Well, that's great, but what kind of coursework did you design? Oh, well, I designed, you know, 20 different courses ranging from chemistry to biology topics. And, you know, tell me what you did or show me what you did. All right, here's a biggie. Always, always, always get a second pair of eyes on your resume before you send it anywhere. And then you want a third pair of eyes, because our brains do this really cool thing where we fill in the gaps, right? And that can leave room for error. So let's take a look at what to do and what not to do. What are some things that you notice between these two?
There's a typo in the what not to do.
Yay, where is it?
I don't know. I'm not looking. April found it.
What were they trying to say? That helped. They were trying to say helped, and instead said Heled on board. Yes. Very good. What else is perhaps missing? Or
the acronym BYOD doesn't have the full words.
yes, that is something that is really, really important when you are going into a corporate position resume versus a teacher resume. You and I both know that we did all those STEAM things and we were part of, you know, X, Y, and Z, IEPs and, you know, BIPs and all this stuff. They have no clue what those mean. And even if you did spell it out, always ask yourself, is this something that they would really know or identify with, or is this education specific? If it's education specific, leave it out and instead describe it. Describe what type of program it was, right?
Just saying teacher versus separating out the text specific skills.
So yeah, just putting English teacher instead of technology facilitator. You can break it down by skills if you want. That is an option. This is really important. Never put a title for a work experience that is not true. Because if they call your job place of employment and they say, I'm calling about, you know, John Smith, your instructional designer / facilitator, they're going to be like, who? We don't have instructional designers here. We have teachers, right? What I recommend is putting educator. I personally really advocate for staying away from the word teacher just because it comes with a lot of unconscious bias that pop up unintentionally. I would use the word educator, education specialist,
Instructor.
Instructor. But I would not, in this section, put instructional designer unless you had something like educator, and then in parentheses put including instructional design, you know, the different layouts. I would not call yourself an instructional designer in this section. It's completely fine and highly encouraged to call yourself an instructional designer in your summary and at the top of your resume. I did want to show that real quick. They have a title up here. You should always have the title of what position you are going for up at the top. There are caveats to this. You can put instructional designer, you can put a learning and development specialist, as long as it does not require a specific licensure or a specific certification or a specific degree to practice it. If you do those skill sets, there's nothing wrong with putting that up there. Now, if you put that you're a physician up there, that's probably not going to go over well unless you have, like, you know, you're doctoral and you're, you know, a doctor. So there are limits to that, but it's okay to say instructional designer there 100%. Okay. All right. Great job, everyone. Moving on to that bottom section. So the bottom section of your resume will likely remain pretty static. Optional categories can include professional associations, certifications obtained or in the process of obtaining, awards and recognitions received, and even abbreviated work history if you really want to continue. If you put, up in your work experience, you had the most relevant 10 years, but you wanted to explain a little bit more at the bottom, you can. Most often you can omit the work history section, though as a recruiter, will only want to see the most relevant experience in this bottom section. So, additional work history, going more than 10 years back, especially if you've had similar roles, it's repetitive. And let's be honest here, what do we do when we see something repeat?
Ignore it.
We ignore it, and we ignore everything that comes after it, right? So you never want to repeat something on your resume because they're going to assume that everything after that is going to be a repeat too. So those are things to think on. That being said, it does not make sense to have 3 pages of fluff that's irrelevant to the job. But if you have 3 pages of really relevant information showing progress and growth in your professional roles over time, then by all means add it. Education is a section that can go on the bottom of a resume. New undergrads usually list education at the top of their resume. Those that had recently obtained a master's degree can opt to list theirs at the top. Most often though, if you've had your degrees for a while, you can list it at the bottom or along the side. There's no need to list a high school diploma. If you have a bachelor's degree, they're going to assume that you have everything else that came underneath that, right? Huge. Don't put the dates. This leaves you susceptible to ageism. Which is also why you should not include more than 10 years of experience, because again, it leaves you susceptible to ageism. So those are key things to keep in mind here. Okay, so looking at what to do and what not to do. Here we just kind of added some things. Don't add pages and sections to your resume to just fill it out. Don't shrink font to make it fit to one page. White space is so important, and we'll talk about that. Typically, a 2-pager, that's the sweet spot. When a recruiter looks at your resume, typically, for the first time, they will spend 30 seconds on it. If they like what they see in the first 30 seconds, they will spend an additional 30 seconds. That means you have a total of 60 seconds to dress to impress. Okay? So whatever you put towards the top, that's what they're going to see first, and that's more likely to get read, right? So those are definitely things to think on. Before we move on to the key achievement section, do I have any questions?
Yes, can you just go like real quick right back to that dates? That date suggestion, that's a little confusing. Is it don't add specific dates that we graduated from college, don't add specific dates to our work?
Great question. For your education experience, like when you graduated, don't add the year. Don't add the year.
So I didn't get my Master of Education degree in 2015. So I'm not going to, my resume doesn't say Master of Education degree, Virginia Commonwealth University, 2015. It just says Master of Education degree from Virginia Commonwealth University.
That's right.
That's all, yeah.
Yep, that's all you need. For your work experience, like I said, I would try not to go more than 10 years back. So again, we can avoid that ageism. But, it's up to you. I would put the years. If you're like me, you have those summer gaps on your resume, So if you're going to put for teaching, I would just keep the years, maybe not even put the months. So it's not something that they think about, because in corporate, they may or may not think about the fact that if you transition to a new teaching job, that means that summer you're technically unemployed.
Mhm.
So
I've had one recruiter go through and clarify the months that I started and ended positions on my resume. There hasn't been any question. My resume just says, 2016 to 2019, 2019 to 2020. Only once did someone ask what month.
and if they really want to know, you can clarify. At
Yeah,
least
and I
that
just
way
told
you
them.
can say, well, it's these are the months, but in the summer times, because it was a teaching position, the contract ended in the summer.
Mm-hmm. What if you've been teaching at the same school for 15 years?
15 years isn't that far off 10. You can put it in there. You can put, we'll just include that one. It can come too. Yeah, good question.
Should we list all of our degrees? Because perhaps we have a bachelor degree, maybe even an associate degree in something different outside of education, like having a bachelor's in marketing. Would you put that on your resume?
For me, and this is me, so, you worked your butt off for a piece of paper that in everything that you have done up until now has been what defines your worth in your position. It's hard to let that stuff go. And you shouldn't have to. You worked hard for that. That's something that shows your grit and your determination and your growth mindset, and that you want to continually learn. Personally, if I earned it, you best bet I'm going to put that on my resume. Of course, I only have a bachelor's, so I mean, it is what it is.
Do you have time for a couple more questions?
I can take one more now, and then we'll take one more at the next point.
Okay. How about just that I've always put education and work history at the top of the resume? Is that a teacher thing? Should we keep that info at the bottom?
Ooh, fancy question. I'm going to get into that in the next section.
Oh, perfect. Look at that segue.
Look at that segue.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Thank you for that segue. All right. So let's talk key achievements. I'm going to be very vulnerable with you and show you my revamped teacher resume fresh out of teaching. And that was this. This was the resume that I secured a position with. My resume has since changed up a little bit since then. But for me, what I always say is having a comprehensive list of key achievements, especially if your experience is all in teaching, can really streamline your resume. And it can make it easier for recruiters to identify what's important qualifications that you offer without having to sift through repeats, right? How many of us have had several schools that we worked at and we're like, how many different ways can I say that I taught, right? This eliminates all that. And so I'm not saying it's the only way to do it. I'm just saying it's one option. I've had very, very good responses to this resume outline. If your resume makes it past the ATS system, again, you have about 30 seconds with the recruiter's eyes. If you had 30 seconds to read something, which of these two would you be able or be willing to read more of?
The better looking one.
Well, and there's also, like I said, white space is important. All of my bullet points here are crammed up against each other. Like my work experience blends into the next one. There's no breathing space, right? It's overwhelming to the eyes. And that's why I'm saying it's better to have two nicely laid out pages versus one cramped page that nobody wants to look at. Okay. So make those 30 seconds count. Here are 3 things to keep in mind when crafting your key achievement section. Number 1, it does not matter what the most important qualification was for being a teacher. It doesn't. You should list your key achievements in the order they appear in the job description. They listed that job description in the way that they did for a reason. It's because they're looking for those top things first. And if you can do these two, that's really cool. But they're really looking for those top ones. So if you have those key achievements up at the top, they're going to be like, oh, check, check, check. And then they're going to keep reading. And that's what you want them to do. You want them to keep reading. Number 2, don't just say you can do it, show you can do it. So give specific examples of how you have demonstrated that ability. For example, budgets projects to reduce stakeholders' upfront expenses. Okay, well, how? What was that? Versus reduced instructional delivery cost of interactive instructional program for an anatomy course from $11,789 to $1,776, or 85%, by researching and purchasing the included components separately from less expensive vendors and self-creating a more customized program workbook. Now that was a little long, but again, numbers pop, they help break it up. And it was a very specific example of, yeah, I can do this. Boom, with sprinkles, like you want to show. Number 3, use key terminology from the job description. If they say they're looking for someone with Microsoft Office skills, and they specifically say Microsoft Office, then you want to phrase it that you work with Microsoft Office. You don't want to put Microsoft PowerPoint, or I've only used PowerPoint, Word, and all that, because that's not what they're going to put into the ATS system. And so little things like that are going to help you. All right. Questions?
Sarah, does your pretty resume work with the ATS?
Sure do.
Nice.
Yes. Yeah. You can put colors in, you can put some boxes in. You just want to make sure that those boxes are not JPEGs. You want to make sure it's text, and you want to make sure it's not table boxes. They should just be text boxes. Great question.
And how do you include your portfolio on your resume? We might all be a little bit different with this, but what do you suggest?
Yeah, for me personally, I put it as a QR code. Just be aware that that's a risky move because it may or may not be read by the ATS system, but it was something that helped me stand out and actually got me an interview, and it actually got me a job. Well, that I got me a job, but my QR code helped. Yeah. So, great question. All right. So just in the sake of time, let's take a look at what that actually looks like. You said, Sarah, okay, I got to change it up, but I mean, what does that actually look like? The years have taught you while using, the years you have taught while using tech programs still used by the ID community count as years of experience in ID. Okay. If you truly break down the job descriptions, they are mostly comprised of what we had to do on the daily as teachers and on monthly and an annual basis. So look at it this way. A teacher has experience in many different fields. Think teaching is macro, right? And we do instructional design, we facilitate and train, we do event planning, project management, data analysis, learning consulting, childcare, curriculum development, communications, and many, 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 many more. But most of those fields cannot say the same about teaching. They can't go from micro to macro. Now, because teaching is macro and you have done all those things, that means you need to work hard to refine those skills. And that's where that upskilling and filling in the knowledge gaps come in. Key takeaway, don't sell yourself short. You're amazing and you've done amazing things. You're not just a teacher. You're a teacher. And that means you've done really cool and great things, and they should shine here. They should shine because you are bright and shining. Right? Okay. Yep. Musical interlude. The trick here is to let go of your role as a teacher. And I know that's hard because it's part of who we are for so long. But remove the teacher and break it down as far as like, okay, what did I do? What did I actually do? right? Take the students out of it, take it all out. And you want to hyper focus on the job skills that transfer into your new area of focus, because trust me, you probably have the experience and examples that match all of the job description responsibilities listed. So for example, my objective statement originally said, 9 years of experience in designing and developing curricula for multiple subjects with diverse populations through research-based techniques and technologies. Lifelong learner dedicated to collaborating and designing engaging curriculum. Passionate leader and self-starter with a proven ability to execute project management in fast-paced capacities while adapting to overcome challenges. This isn't bad, but it's not great either. Instead, I'm going to use that I language. I am a passionate instructional designer. I came right out and said it, right? I just came out and said it. With 9 years of experience in the end-to-end production of instructor-led, blended, and e-learning instructional programs. I thrive on using creativity to design the most effective learner solutions. My expertise lies in, that's an excellent one to write down. Go ahead and put that in your little toolkit. Instead of saying proven ability or proven track record, those are tired, those are old, they're outdone. Use my expertise lies in working collaboratively with subject matter experts and stakeholders to effectively translate instructional goals into meaningful training material. Training material. Again, I don't want to say teaching material. Instructional material's fine, but not worksheets and whatnot. My product success is evidenced by. That's another good one. My success is evidenced by, right? Metrics collected through course formative and summative assessments and is ensured by using that data to drive iterative design. I am a self-starter with the ability to execute project management and fast-paced capacities, yada, yada. So it's just fine-tuning it a little bit. I'm not going to go through all of these. I am going to go through a couple of them. So for this one, this is a big one that we talk about as teachers, right? We designed, created, and assessed engaging interactive curriculum and materials. If you're going for a higher ed job, curriculum is a fine word to use. If you're going for a corporate job and they use the word curricula or curriculum in their job description, it's fine to use. If you're going for a corporate job and they do not use that word, don't use that word. Okay? To provide students, that is a big no-no. Content and experiential practice to meet goal objectives. So what does that translate to? Design custom instructor-led, blended, and e-learning courses and deliverables. Deliverables, those are worksheets and slide decks and job aids. We lump those all together. In corporate, we call them deliverables. Okay. Tailored to stakeholder/business objectives using branching scenarios, interactives, and simulations. So I said I did it, and then I said how I did it. Creating and implementing lessons and materials. We don't use the word lessons in corporate. Typically, we use words such as courses or training or micro-learning, if that's applicable, e-learning. Delivered in American Sign Language for chemistry, ecology, personal finance, English 9 through 12, career exploration, and functional reading and writing. They don't care that I know sign language. They just don't. Okay. It's taken up space on my resume. And to be honest, they don't really care about all the subjects I taught either. And I know that can be hard. If you're an elementary school teacher, if you are a teacher, do not age your learners. Don't do it. They don't need to know how old your learners are. So we never say students, we say learners or participants, but we don't say students. Because students, even though this isn't necessarily true, but when we hear the word students, we automatically think young, right? So created deliverables, there's your favorite word. Such as slide decks, job aids, and interactive games. Slide decks, those are PowerPoints. Job aids, that's what your worksheets were, or your instruction handouts. Those are job aids. And interactive games using programs. And I told them what programs I used. And I used the word, and this is pro tip, including, which means I know a lot more than these three, but I'm not limiting to these three, right? All right. Last one I'm going to go into detail with is pre-tests to guide student learning objectives with state learning standards. You do not want to mention state learning standards anywhere. That's the same thing as business goals and objectives. Pre-tests, you did those to perform a needs analysis. It was part of your needs analysis. So you performed and documented upfront and iterate. That means it changes all the time. You adapted to make sure it meets the needs of your learners. And then put how many learners you had, 200 targeted learners, including gap analysis, interviews, research, evaluation, and performance metrics compilation to drive design process and alignment to business objectives and standards. Education's a business. State standards, I'm gonna say those are business objectives and standards. Come at me, bro. Just kidding. I'd probably run away, but seriously, we do send out the slide deck, so you'll be able to look through these other examples as well. We are teachers. It is okay for you to borrow and make your own. I am okay with that. All right. This last section, job description based on tweaking. This is an example of an instructional job position or description. And we'll break it down a little bit so you can see how you can utilize your new key ID key achievement statements into a targeted resume. So look at the job requirements first to ensure that you are qualified. So here you would need a bachelor's degree, check. At least 2 years experience in training and design and development, check. You have that. You got it. Now here's the kick in the teeth. I'm sure some of you have come across this and you've been like, ah! Right? Yeah. At least 1 year of experience with Articulate Storyline or Adobe Captivate to create online e-learning courseware. Here's what I'll say about that. If that's a requirement, apply anyway. As long as you have competent handle on using one of those tools and you have work samples that you can show, it should be okay. So when I was interviewing for the position that I currently have, they asked me, they said, do you have at least a year of Articulate experience? Never lie, because it will bite you in the tuchus and that hurts. Don't lie. So I said, honestly, no, I don't. However, I have a lot of hours in the tool, and here are the work samples that I have built creating it, or that I have built using that tool in the last few months. And they said that was sufficient. They just wanted to make sure that I was competent in the tool. Really, if you think about years of experience, if you touch the program once a month for an hour over the course of a year, you have a year's experience, right? But that doesn't mean you know how to use the tool. It's all about if you can use the tool. And it doesn't mean that you have to be a pro at it. You just have to be able to use it enough to make training, right? All right. So you're going to use the job description as your roadmap. Focus on those basic qualifications first. Some companies require that you have all basic qualifications listed and will ask you to submit a questionnaire affirming that you meet them. Honesty is important. If you falsify a resume and it's discovered during employment, your offer can be rescinded and or legal action can be taken. Don't lie on your resume or in your interviews, okay? This actually happened to Bethany Kilgore helped me make this deck, and it happened to a colleague of hers when she noticed that the person she submitted an offer to had a LinkedIn profile that was drastically different from their resume. And unfortunately, the offer was rescinded due to falsification of information presented. Don't let that be you. Be aware that while you do need to meet the minimum qualifications, anything else is a nice to have. They're going to describe a unicorn because unicorns are bright and shiny and pretty. But they are realistic in that they might not find a unicorn. And they might have to settle for a really fantastic rhino. I'm a really fantastic rhino, and I'm okay with that. Most people are, you know? And you're going to meet and exceed their expectations because you work hard, because that's who teachers are as people. So this is something that I've seen that has a lot of evidence and research done on this. And it is especially true for women, even though, you know, some men as well. If we don't match a resume or a job description word for word, we think, oh, I can't apply for this. Apply anyway. Shoot. You know what? You can't be in any worse position than you already are. The worst they could tell you is no, and then you're right where you are. So go ahead and apply anyway. You need to grow a thick skin. You will get a lot of rejection. It will suck, but it's okay because they make wine and cheeseburgers, chocolate, you know? And so you'll get through it, and then you'll get up and you'll apply to more the next day. Next, you're going to underline or highlight the specific job responsibilities and qualifications that align with your current and past work. It's great visual to see how you can align your current position to the job description. And then you're going to use the underlined or highlighted areas as your blueprint when crafting your target resume. So you're going to use the same language. You're going to make sure that your key achievements are listed in the same order, right? And then, as shared before, to beat the ATS system and show your relevant work experience, you should not use the same resume for every job. I can't stress this enough, okay? By now, you also know how to tweak your resume into one for instructional design because you will continue to gain experience. I encourage you to create a master resume. If you took the resume workshops, if you didn't come to my resume workshops, that's okay, they're on YouTube. But you create a plain text resume first, and you have that you then take and plug into your template and you rearrange per job that you apply to. And if you're someone who's considering multiple different job roles, say instructional design or you want to be a corporate trainer, those are separate resumes. Do not lump them together. Okay, they are separate. The master resume will serve as a massive repository of related skills and qualifications. It does not have to be in resume format either, really. It can have general headings where you can brainstorm and data dump as much as you want, and then you just copy and paste over. That's fine too. I recommend updating your master resume with every change in season. And this is to ensure that you're not listing any new certifications or accomplishments that you have done. As a word of caution, the master resume is for your information only. Do not send this 5 to 10 page behemoth out as a catch-all. Just don't do that. As recruiters do not want to come through that. So hiring managers will also question your skills with anything resulting in a mini novel being shared because they're going to think that you don't know how to whittle down information to what's necessary. The best resumes contain 1 to 3 pages of specific related content. How you craft your target resume from here becomes an easy 3-step process as numbered here. Aligning your resume in the same manner that is outlined in a job makes it easier for the recruiter and hiring manager to see your abilities and can thus make you a more desirable candidate. All right. Okie dokie. Questions about all that? I know that was a lot.
Yes. So I have my little question Excel forms sheet is pretty poppin' over here with some questions about let me see. A couple of slides ago, Sarah, when you were showing, I think the middle part of the resume example of what to do and what not to do. There were a couple of questions, for example, whether or not to put the grade levels taught, what is too many bullet points, what is too few bullet points.
So let's take a few of those real quick. Grade levels, leave grade levels out. You never want to do anything that would age your learners. You just want to say these are the learners. You can, give a nudge to what the content was about. You can one I did want to really bring up, you should always have a bullet point about train the trainer events. You have all done these. If you have ever taught another teacher something, you've done a train the trainer event and you used adult learning principles to do it. That being said, if you've had a student teacher, also train the trainer. Okay. What was that other question?
Bullet points.
Bullet points.
Too few, too many.
I would say once you start repeating yourself, that's too many. If you are breaking it, if you do not have a lump key achievement section and you have it per job, I would not put more than 4 to 5 per job.
Someone had said to have no more than 5 bullets for like the current job that you're in, and then perhaps less for previous jobs. And I got advice a couple of months ago from a learning and development leader who said that when she looks at resumes, she likes to have even numbers of bullet points.
Oh yeah, no.
Like,
if whatever you do to one section, you do it to all the sections.
Yeah, exactly. So there are questions that come back around to having a key achievement section versus listing out being a teacher. And I guess my personal advice for that is I want to plug in the office hours that TPLD has. So we have Sarah, Heidi, Tyler, who was in here, and Cheryl, and Leslie, who are all professional instructional designers. And they have volunteer time throughout the week to meet one-on-one with you guys on Zoom to go over your resume and your portfolio one-on-one. So there were a couple of questions tonight about how, like, having been a coach, and perhaps this one about being repetitive for different teaching jobs. And if you sign up for those office hours, like, Sarah will literally sit down with you and talk to you about everything you're saying. So I'm going to drop that link in for where to sign up with those 5 mentors. But I can also say, read one of these questions down here. Here's one, Sarah. Since you tweak your resume for each job, what do you do with the LinkedIn job sections?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question.
Those things down there.
What? Think about it this way. Your cover letter, your resume, your LinkedIn, and your portfolio are all real estate pieces that you have. And they all work together to they're all a piece of the puzzle to the picture that is you. Okay? On your resume, you might not be able to go into detail about some of the things that you wanted to mention. Mention those in your LinkedIn, For example, I have American Sign Language on my LinkedIn. I don't have it on my resume because it's not necessarily relevant to that, but that's something that I think is pertinent and it is a skill. So you want those 4 things to complement each other, but you don't want those 4 things to repeat necessarily. They should be separate individual things because you want them to work together to really give you the most whole picture of who you are. So that's how I approach that. I would in your LinkedIn, I would put bullet points of things that you did, key achievements. You can put a few things that are the same from your resume, absolutely. But your About Me section, that's where you have really a great opportunity to say who you are, right? In your portfolio, you can talk about your design thinking, why you make things the way you do, what inspires you, right? So they're complements to each other, but they're not repeating the same information. It's a great question.
That is a good question. And I just learned a lot too, because I have not been utilizing my LinkedIn job thingies like that. So good. Thank you for asking. Who was that? I bet that was Heidi. Was that you, Heidi? Yeah. I knew it.
Also, I will say, I really recommend a cover letter. I know a lot of people have looked at this as a little bit archaic and outdated and not in use anymore. Only about 20% of applicants write cover letters, but this is your chance to show why you are interested in this position and why you could really work together with this organization to do great things. And the worst that they could do is ignore it and you're in the same spot. But if it comes down to between you and another candidate, they're going to have to find those minute things that were different between the two, right? And that cover letter, if you made one, is going to show initiative. Same thing with follow-up emails. You should always follow up any type of application with an email, a thank you note. It should be personalized. It should include what you talked about and how you're excited to apply that. So it's the little things that are going to make the difference.